In case you've been living under a rock, last week AMD finally launched their Ryzen 2000 chips, and in our review of the flagship Ryzen 2700X, we found it to be a pretty worthy successor to the 1700X and even 1800X. It performs phenomenally well in multi-threaded tasks and even semi-significantly boosted gaming performance compared to last gen, but in our excitement to put the 2700X through its paces, we forgot to test one extremely important, some would say the most important aspect of its performance, which in case you can't tell, and I need to fix this, is mining. We need to test the mining performance. And when I say that we forgot, it's just because we only had it for a few days and we didn't have enough time. So now we had enough time. There we go. So all of that changes right now. That's right, we sent the 2700X into the mines and told it not to come back until it gathered up some sweet, spicy crypto coin. And in this video, we'll be taking a look at what it brought back. Now, it shouldn't be all that surprising that we decided to test the mining performance of the new generation of Ryzen chips, and not just because there were literally thousands of comments asking for it on our review. It shouldn't be surprising because the first generation of Ryzen processors were pretty exceptional little miners, especially when compared to their Intel counterparts. It also shouldn't be too shocking because thanks to Monero hard fork that went down not too long ago, which booted ASIC miners off the network and massively reduced mining difficulty, mining the coin became a heck of a lot more profitable. And with the recent price increases seen by a good number of coins over the last few days, including Monero, which went up about 65% in the last week or so, CPU mining is still alive and kicking. Why Zen Plus should be the better miner. Now, we already had a slightly more in-depth look at the 2700X specifications and cool new features in our review, check out there, but it's worth taking another quick look since many of them should make the 2700X a capable miner, the specifications that is. Just like its last gen siblings, the 2700X sports 8 cores and 16 threads, which along with its 16 megabytes of L3 cache means they mine most optimally using 8 threads, not 16. Unlike the first gen Ryzen 7 parts, the 2700X is built on the new Zen Plus 12 nanometer architecture, which brings in with it a 4.3 gigahertz max boost clock speed and native support for 2933 megahertz memory, both of which should provide a nice bump in mining performance. But the most exciting feature of the new architecture, especially for miners, is Zen Plus improvements to cache latency. Because CPU mining algorithms like CryptoNight and Monero's new CryptoNight v7 algorithms are heavily dependent on L3 cache size and speed, any improvements in those areas is good news for miners. Along with a 13% improvement to L1 and 34% improvement to L2 cache latency over first gen, AMD claims that its Zen Plus architecture also brings a 16% improvement to L3 cache latency. All of that means we should see a fairly significant increase in hash rates across the board on the new chip compared to the previous gen Ryzens. So let's just find out how significant that is. First, let's take a look at what the 1700 manages to bring in right now on Monero's new CryptoNight v7 algorithm. Now, we know the 1700 is able to muster around 500 hashes per second, mining on alternative versions of the CryptoNight algorithm, including the one used by Monero before the fork. But when we switched to Monero's new CryptoNight v7 algorithm using the latest version of the XMR stack miner, we saw that number dip to around 400 hashes per second. This could be down to various factors, including the fact that it's still a new algorithm that might not be 100% optimized yet. Even so, mining Monero on CryptoNight v7 is still by far the most profitable route to take, as you're about to see. Taking the Ryzen 1700's hash rate of 500 hashes per second on the old version of CryptoNight and putting that into finding out whatever is most profitable, we see that Dynasty coin would be the most profitable coin to mine right now, and by profitable, we mean totally not profitable. ASIC miners like Bitmain's monstrous Antminer X3 have decimated any hopes of mining coins on non-ASIC resistant CryptoNight algorithms with CPUs or GPUs. Our 1700's paltry 500 hashes per second mining Dynasty coin would result in a daily profit of 11 cents per day. And that's before adding electricity costs in the mix. Thankfully, even though our 1700 only produces 400 hashes per second on Monero's new algorithm, its much lower mining difficulty makes it far more worthwhile to mine. At 400 hashes per second, the 1700 should be able to bring in around 74 cents per day. It's not a massive amount by any stretch, but it's a whole lot better than 11 cents per day, and with some additional optimizations as the algorithm matures, that number could go up a fair bit. And when we give our number of 400 hashes per second, we are sure that a lot of you guys have optimized beyond what we have to get much higher hash rates on even the v7 algorithm. And we always get comments down below saying, oh, my chip does twice that, what's wrong with you? We're just testing it how we test it so that we can compare the two numbers, not so that we can get the best out of the 1700 and the best out of the 2700X, but to see where the differences lie with how we test. The cheapest 1700 currently goes for around $260 new, and at a profit of 74 cents per day, it should pay itself off in 350 days or so. Not exactly a great investment for mining, but what about the 2700X? Let's see what all of its optimizations and cache improvements actually bring to the table. So going by specs alone, we suspected that the 2700X would perform better at mining on Monero's new algorithm than the 1700, and as it turns out, we were right on the virtual money. Using the latest version of XMR Stack Miner with support for CryptoNight v7, the 2700X at stock settings managed an average hash rate of around 510 hashes per second, though we did notice a spike of around 550 hashes per second off camera. Of course, it happened when we weren't recording. Just like with the 1700, that hash rate is a little lower than it would have been on the old CryptoNight algorithm, but since mining on that isn't really profitable right now, it's not a big deal. At a hash rate of 510 hashes per second, the 2700X is expected to bring in 94 cents per day before electricity costs, which is 27% more than what we saw with the 1700. Since 2700X currently goes for a bit more than the 1700, $330 to be more specific, we expected a slightly longer return on investment. Surprisingly though, if you actually do the math, it's only 351 days, just one day more than the 1700. I mean, sure, it's still almost a year to see any kind of return on investment, but we're surprised it wasn't much longer, except for, math is immutable and you can't really change that. And just like with the 1700, we expect the 2700X can manage an even more impressive hash rate as the algorithm matures and miners learn how to best optimize the chip for the task. And as we mentioned, this was not a test to see what's the best hash rate, but at its default settings, what type of percentage difference do you get between the two chips? And it looks like it's 27% faster just right out of the box, which if you can optimize for it, should actually give you a lot better performance. Now, while we focus mainly on mining Monero because it's the most profitable, well-known coin to mine on right now, it's likely not the best one to mine. Mining smaller, lower difficulty coins can provide better profitability in the long run. You can mine them while they're still easy to mine and fairly cheap, and then sell them off if its price actually moons. It's a risky move since there's no guarantee that prices will go up, but it's a high risk, high reward kind of scenario, but that's a different day and another channel topic for somebody else. Okay, so even though the 2700X does bring in more coin than the last gen Ryzen parts, our stance on CPU mining remains unchanged from the first video we did. Buying one of these beasts or any of a CPU primarily for its mining capabilities just doesn't make sense. The 2700X is a fantastic chip for productivity workloads, gaming, streaming, editing, and pretty much whatever else you want to throw at it. The fact that it's also a fairly decent miner too should be somewhat of an afterthought if you're considering getting one. That being said, if you already have one ticking away in your system or have been planning to upgrade to it sometime soon, then yes, it could definitely be worth your while to send it to the mines while you're not using the system, or you don't need to use all 16 threads, and you can dedicate half of the threads to mining while you use the other half to actually, do productivity stuff on the computer. So at current profitability and depending on the price of electricity and you're in the neck of the woods, it won't be worthwhile to everyone. Similarly, those who aren't comfortable pushing their new hardware to its limits and running it at high temperatures for extended periods of times, you should be probably steering clear of this too. But if you're not worried about any of that and you can use an extra, dollar per day, then have at it. But as I mentioned a couple times in this video, I know that our hash rates aren't the most optimized and not the highest that we can get. So I want to know what your feedback is. I'm sure that there's plenty of you getting 500 to 600 hashes per second on the 1700. So I'm curious what you guys are also getting on the new Ryzen chips. What are you getting on the 2700, 2700X? I want to hear what that looks like. We just went from a percentage increase type of perspective for this video, but let me know what your actual numbers are and how you're treating it, and if you're actually buying this for mining. Let's chat about that down in the comments down below. Be sure to smash the like button if you enjoyed this video. Don't worry, CPUs aren't going to go out of stock for miners. They're not taking that too. Let us know if there's anything else that you want us to test on the Ryzen 7 2700X while we still have it. Be sure to get subscribed, stay up to date on all of our tech related content, and if you're looking to buy one of these chips, you can use our Amazon affiliate code down in the video description. Gives us a small kickback, doesn't cost you an extra cent, helps the channel stay around. Anyways, I'm Brett with the UFD Tech channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Cheers.